time of death, there is something called deathbed coincidences. In these, the dying person, at the moment of death, because we've got data to support that, goes and visits somebody to whom they're emotionally connected. They have to be emotionally connected. And they give them a message. And the message, the way they give the message, depends on how the person who's receiving the message are. If you're awake, then you tend to feel the person's presence. You feel something awful may have happened to them. You have to contact them and find out what's going on. They very seldom give a message then. But if you're asleep, then you get a narrative dream. You're told a story. You're visited by the dying people, and they will say, I'm okay, please don't worry about me, it's all right, and then they leave. So these are very, very reassuring to the family and the relatives. And then at the time of death and just after death, there are a whole lot of things which happen. People see light in the room over the time that you're dying. Other people see things leaving the body. Other people experience the fact that their clocks may have stopped at the time of death. So there are lots of things, that many of them are quite non-local. Animals are very common in the dying phase, and birds particularly. And we've got a lot of stories of birds that seem to be carrying the people who, the relatives feel, carrying the spirit of the dying person. Some people in the stories we have associate this going process with a change in temperature in the room, and sometimes with a feeling that something has left. And then that seems to be the end of the dying process. So there are lots of exciting things. We did a study on all the experiences of the dying, of which one is deathbed coincidences. And these occur at the moment of death. In our series, it was within a few minutes of death, but all within half an hour of death. So it's at the moment of death. And it seems as if it's in part of the giving up process. I think the dying people have a last wish, if you like. And it's usually just to say goodbye to their daughter, to say goodbye to a son who isn't there, to meet and say goodbye to usually some relative who isn't there. You can see all these things are heart-driven. So you have a very strong positive emotional connection with them. And that seems to link you at the moment of death. And so you seem to be able to contact them. If they're awake, it takes one form. If they're asleep, it's another. If they're awake, when you go to contact them, they feel it as a push, a shove, maybe a very strong feeling, or quite often it's a very strong feeling that something awful has happened to you. And in our series, we could rule out expectation, because in over 50%, that's over half of them, didn't know the person was even ill. So it's independent of whether you're expecting them to die or whether you aren't. So it's not expectation on the part of the receiver. So if it's a dream, then it's quite different. It's a narrative dream. Narrative means it tells a story. The story usually is that the person comes to see you and they give you a message. And the message is always, please don't worry about me, I'm okay. And then they fade. Sometimes they come to you in the light. In other words, they're surrounded by a loving light, loving white light. And sometimes they don't have that, but always there is this very positive message that they give to the person who they've contacted. There are a whole lot of things which happen as you come up to death. First one is deathbed visitors. And these are usually dead relatives. They can be spiritual beings. They come into the room, some will sit on the bed, and the dying people talk to them. Should one think they're mad? No, it's perfectly normal. Then the next thing is that they report that they're going into this transcendent reality. Does this mean they're mad? No, it's just part of the death process. You get something which is called terminal lucidity, or what the Victorians called lightening up before death. It's when people suddenly, they may have Alzheimer's and not recognized their family. They may be in coma. They may be paralyzed. Well, they will sit up in bed, they'll recognize their family, they'll say goodbye to them, and then they'll lie down and die, and that's the end. So there is that. Then at the moment of death, you get the deathbed coincidences, but you get other things. Light in the room, it takes various form. It can be a transcendent light. Some people can see it, others can't, suggesting it may be a psychological light in the people who are watching. It's difficult to know, maybe both. They see shapes leaving the body, and we've got qualities of shapes very much like the Tibetan Book of the Dead. They see smoke coming from the body. It's not smoke, I mean, it looks like smoke, very tenuous. And then the next one is that it's a mirage first actually, then smoke, then shapes leaving the body. These are all described and people see them. They're all normal death phenomena. And then there are the deathbed coincidences, but birds come into the room. You get lovely bird stories. There's another one we were told from America where there was this very precise man. He did everything extremely well and very precisely. And when he died, a snowy owl came into the village and sat in the tree. And a snowy owl is a very precise bird. It's sort of very clean, and very like he was, in fact. And it sat in it. They'd never seen a snowy owl in the village before. And it was there until the funeral. And then after the funeral was over, the snowy owl flew away. We've got quite a lot of stories like that with cats. Cats used to always go and sit on this woman's knee in a particular chair. And after she died, it wouldn't go near the chair. It was clearly afraid of it. And this happened until the funeral, and then after the funeral, cat went happily back to sit on the chair again. I mean, you know, there are a lot of stories like that. So the reason I tell you these stories is that these are stories which people have told me, so they're meaningful in our culture. So we have to think about this in terms of death and not be afraid of it. How to have a good death just depend on the science. And what the science tells us is that, and this comes from Monica Rentz's paper, that she took what sort of people, what the people who were dying had done, what their lives were like. And there is a sort of feeling within the palliative care group, particularly those who are interested in the process of dying, is that it actually doesn't matter what you believe, you're going to go through the dying process. It's independent of that. So if you think that you're going to go and meet hellfire, you won't. If you think you're going to go into positive transcendence, you will. But if you have a very strict faith as to what's going to happen, that probably won't. And you can see why now, because you have to give everything up, and you have to give your faith up as well. And she asked the question, who suffers? Well, those who've had near-death experiences hardly suffer at all, because they've been there, they know about it. That's simple. Those people who pray tend to suffer less than those who don't. Those people who meditate or do yoga, they tend to suffer less than those who don't. Those who go into the palliative care unit thinking that death will be okay, do better than those who go in and are frightened. But one of the most interesting ones to me is those people who are curious about the death process suffer much less than those who are fighting it. So I think what I would say is have some form of self-development like prayer or yoga or meditation or something like that, and be curious and interested to see what happens, and you'll probably have a good death.